My son looked me dead in the eyes, slid a piece of paper across my kitchen table, and said, "You have until Friday, Mom. Figure it out." $312,000. I sat there staring at that number until the ink started to blur. My hands were shaking, my coffee was getting cold, and the boy I had sacrificed everything for, the boy I had worked double shifts for, the boy I had skipped vacations for, the boy I had loved more than my own heartbeat, was already walking toward the door like he'd just asked me to pass the salt. That was a Tuesday. By Thursday night, I was gone, and I never looked back.
You have to understand who I was before all of this happened. Because the woman sitting at that kitchen table in that moment? She didn't appear out of nowhere. She was built, slowly, painfully, by decades of giving and giving until there was almost nothing left to give. My name is Linda. I'm 61 years old. I live in a small house in eastern Ohio, or I used to, anyway. I was married for 22 years to a man named Gerald, and we had one son together. His name is Caleb. Gerald passed away from a heart attack 11 years ago. He was 54. We were sitting in the living room watching the evening news and he just went quiet. That was it. No warning. No goodbye. Just silence where the person you loved most used to be. After Gerald died, it was just me and Caleb. He was 26 at the time, already out of the house, already working in real estate development. I was proud of him. I really was. He had Gerald's drive and his father's confidence, and watching him build something from nothing made me feel like maybe, just maybe, all the sacrifices had been worth something. I worked as a medical billing coordinator for 31 years. Same hospital, same department, same desk. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, it kept the lights on, and after Gerald died, it kept me sane. Work gave me structure when grief wanted to swallow me whole. I had a small retirement account. Not impressive by any standard, but enough. A little over $290,000 saved up from 3 decades of putting away whatever I could. Gerald left me a life insurance payout of about $180,000, which I kept in a separate account, untouched. I always called it my just in case money. I own my house outright. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, a garden out back, a porch where I used to drink my morning coffee and listen to the birds. That house was paid for with Gerald's life and my sweat, and I loved every square inch of it. Life was quiet. Lonely sometimes, yes, but manageable. That all changed when Caleb's business started struggling. The first time Caleb asked me for money was about 4 years ago. He called me on a Sunday morning, voice tight, words careful, the way he always talked when he was uncomfortable. He said one of his development projects had hit a snag. A contractor had walked off the job. He needed $40,000 to cover the gap, or he'd miss a deadline and lose the whole deal. He promised he'd pay it back within 6 months with interest. I transferred the money that week. He paid it back. Not in 6 months, it took almost a year, but he did pay it back. So when he called again 8 months later with a similar situation, I told myself, he's responsible, he follows through, this is just how business works sometimes. That time it was $65,000. He paid most of it back. Then came the third call. And the fourth. Each one a little larger than the last. Each one with a very convincing explanation. A zoning delay here. A partner pulling out there. Material costs skyrocketing. Mom, I just need to bridge the gap. You know I'm good for it. And I believed him. Every single time. I want to be honest with you, because I think a lot of you watching this will understand what I'm about to say. When you love someone, really love them, you don't always see the pattern while you're inside it. I wasn't blind. I wasn't stupid. I was just a mother who wanted desperately to believe her son was going to be okay. But there were signs. God, were there signs. I noticed that Caleb stopped talking about his projects in detail. Early on, he used to come over for Sunday dinners and spread blueprints on my kitchen table, talking a mile a minute about square footage and market projections. That stopped. When I asked about specific developments, he'd wave his hand and say, "It's complicated, Mom. I'll explain it when it's done." I noticed he got a new car. Then another one. A Tesla. Beautiful thing, black with tan interior. I made a comment about it once, something gentle, like, "That must have been expensive." And he looked at me like I'd insulted him. I noticed his wife, Danielle, stopped coming to family dinners. They'd been married for 5 years and she used to be warm with me, genuinely warm. Then slowly she became distant. Polite but distant. The kind of polite that feels like a wall. One evening I was on the phone with my friend Rosemary. We'd worked together at the hospital for 15 years, and she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Linda, when's the last time Caleb asked you how you were doing? Not what you could do for him. Just how you were doing?" I sat with that question for a long time. I couldn't remember. But what happened next completely changed everything. It was a Thursday evening in late October. Caleb called and asked if he could come over the next morning. Said he needed to talk to me about something important. I made a pot of his favorite coffee, that dark roast he likes, and I baked a coffee cake, because that's what mothers do. We make coffee cake when something feels off, like butter and sugar can soften whatever's coming. He showed up at 9 a.m. sharp. No hug at the door. No. "Hey Mom, how are you?" He walked straight to the kitchen table, sat down, and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it toward me without a word. I opened it slowly. There were papers inside. Legal documents. Loan agreements. Pages and pages of financial records with my name on them, my signature, over and over again. "What is this?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I expected. "Those are the loans," he said flatly. "The ones you co-signed." And that's when I discovered the truth. I had not simply been giving Caleb money over the past few years. Apparently, and I still can barely type these words without my chest tightening, Caleb had had me sign documents over the years. Documents I had trusted him on. Documents I had signed without my glasses, at kitchen tables, during phone calls where he'd say, "It's just a formality, Mom, just so the bank has a family guarantor on file." He had used my name, my credit, my social security number to co-sign on business loans I didn't fully understand. Loans that were now, every single one of them, in default. $312,000. That was the total. "The lenders are calling it due," Caleb said, folding his hands on the table like he was in a board meeting. "They've already sent notices. If it's not resolved by Friday, they're going to move on your assets." He paused. "That means the house, Mom." I remember the room getting very quiet. Like the air had been sucked out. "Caleb," I said slowly, "did you know this was coming?" He didn't answer right away. And in that silence, I got my answer. He had known. He had known for months. And he had let me keep making his coffee and baking his coffee cake and believing that everything was fine, while the walls were quietly closing in around me. "You need to figure it out," he said, standing up. "I've done everything I can on my end." Then he added, and I will never forget this as long as I live, he said, "You still have Gerald's insurance money, right? That should cover most of it." He knew about that account. He'd known all along. He picked up his folder and walked out. And I sat at that kitchen table, alone, staring at a coffee cake that neither one of us had touched. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. That night I didn't sleep. Not even close. I lay in the dark in the bedroom that Gerald and I had shared for 22 years, and I stared at the ceiling and I thought about every single moment that had led to this one. I thought about the night Gerald died. About how Caleb had held me in the hospital hallway and cried into my shoulder and said, "It's just us now, Mom. I'll take care of you." I thought about every loan transfer. Every signed document. Every Sunday dinner where I'd cooked for a son who was slowly, methodically dismantling my financial future. I cried. I won't pretend I didn't. I cried the ugly kind, The kind where you can't breathe right and your whole chest aches and you press your face into a pillow so the neighbors don't hear you. But somewhere around 3 in the morning, the crying stopped. And something else started. I called Rosemary at 7 a.m. and told her everything. There was a long silence on her end. Then she said very quietly, "Linda, what do you want to do?" And I realized, for the first time in a very long time, that nobody was asking me that question. Not Caleb. Not the banks. Not the lawyers who were about to come knocking. Nobody was asking what I wanted. So I sat with it. What did I want? I wanted my life back. Not the version that revolved around propping up my son's failures. Not the version where I was a silent resource to be drawn from until I was empty. I wanted the version of my life that was mine, the one I had earned with 31 years of work and a marriage built on real love and a retirement that was supposed to mean peace. And I realized something critical. Something that changed everything. I had options. I called a bankruptcy attorney that same morning. Her name was Patricia, and she had been recommended by someone at my old hospital. I explained the situation in full. I told her about the co-signed loans, the signatures, the timeline. She listened. Then she said, "Linda, were you made fully aware of the terms of each loan when you signed?" I told her the truth. No. I hadn't been. I'd been told they were formalities. I had never received independent copies. I had never been counseled separately from my son. She said, "That matters. A lot. But here's the part that really shifted something in me." Patricia explained that while the legal process would take time, potentially months, there were protections available. And more importantly, she said this: "Whatever you decide to do with your assets in the meantime is your right, as long as it isn't done fraudulently. You are allowed to sell your property. You are allowed to move your finances. You are a free person, Linda. A free person." I wrote those words on a notepad and stared at them. Then I made a decision. Not out of panic. Not out of spite. Out of pure, clear-eyed self-preservation. I was going to protect what was left of my life, the parts that were still mine, before anyone else had the chance to take them. Over the next 48 hours, I moved fast and I moved quietly. I called a real estate agent I'd known for years. Told her I needed to sell the house quickly. She had a cash buyer interested in properties in my area. Within 24 hours we had a verbal agreement. I called Gerald's brother, my brother-in-law Frank, who lives down in Asheville, North Carolina. Frank is a quiet man, steady and kind, and he'd always told me his guest house was open any time I needed it. I told him I was taking him up on that. He didn't ask a single question. He just said, "Come whenever you're ready." I packed what mattered. Clothes. Photos. Gerald's watch. My mother's china. The things that had weight, real weight, not dollar signs. I closed certain accounts. I restructured others with Patricia's legal guidance. Everything above board, everything documented. And on Thursday night, exactly 48 hours after Caleb had sat at my kitchen table and told me to figure it out, I loaded the last box into my car, took one long look at that house, at the garden, at the porch where I used to drink my coffee and listen to the birds. And I drove away. No note. No phone call. No text message. Just silence. The same silence he had given me for years. It took Caleb 4 days to realize I was gone. I know this because Rosemary, God bless that woman, kept me informed from a safe distance. Apparently he showed up at the house on Friday, the deadline day, and found a lockbox on the door and a for sale sign in the yard. He called my cell phone 11 times. I watched the screen light up and I let every single call go to voicemail. His first voicemails were demanding. Confused. "Mom, what is this? Call me back. This isn't funny." By the fourth voicemail, the tone had shifted. Something like panic creeping in at the edges. By the 8th, he was asking me to please just talk to him. I didn't call back. Not then. Patricia, meanwhile, was doing what Patricia does. She had filed documentation contesting the validity of the loan co-signatures, citing the lack of independent legal counsel, the manner in which the documents were presented, and a financial exploitation statute that exists in Ohio to protect older adults from exactly this kind of situation. The banks, suddenly facing a contested claim, slowed down considerably. And then, this is where karma stops being a concept and becomes a very real thing. Caleb's business partner came forward. His name was Terrence, and apparently he and Caleb had been having their own separate legal dispute for over a year. Terrence, it turned out, had documentation showing that Caleb had been misrepresenting the projects to investors and family members alike. That several loans had been taken out under misleading pretenses. That the money hadn't gone entirely where Caleb said it had gone. I won't get into every detail because honestly some of it is still in the legal process. But what I will tell you is this: the investigation that followed was not small. And the name that appeared in those documents, over and over again, was not mine. It was Caleb's. He lost the Tesla. He lost his business license. He and Danielle separated. She filed papers within 2 months of everything unraveling. And the grand irony, the thing that still gives me a complicated kind of feeling I can't quite name, is that the house he and Danielle had been living in, the beautiful 5-bedroom house he'd bought with business profits, was repossessed. He called me one more time, about 6 months after I'd left. I was sitting on Frank's porch in Asheville, watching the mountains, drinking coffee. I answered. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." I said, "I know, Caleb." And then, very gently, very calmly, I said, "When you're ready to be honest, not just sorry, but actually honest, you know how to reach me." And I hung up. I've been in Asheville for almost 8 months now. The guest house has a little porch of its own, and there are birds here too, different kinds than Ohio, but birds just the same. My retirement isn't what it was. Some of it is tied up still. But enough of it is intact. Enough for a quiet life. Enough for mornings without dread. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry at Caleb. And the honest answer is, it's complicated. He's still my son. That didn't stop being true the moment he slid that piece of paper across the table. But I also understand now, clearly and completely, that loving someone does not mean absorbing the consequences of their choices. It does not mean handing over the last pieces of yourself so they don't have to face what they've done. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone, and for yourself, is simply refuse to keep showing up for a dynamic that's destroying you. I didn't vanish out of anger. I vanished because I finally, after 61 years, chose myself. And if you're watching this and you're sitting with your own version of that kitchen table, your own version of someone sliding their problems across to you and expecting you to carry them, I want you to hear this. You are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to be a free person. Gerald's watch is on my wrist right now. It keeps perfect time. And so, finally, do I.